Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a small farmhouse in Mansfield, Missouri. The year is 1932. The air smells like wood smoke and old paper. Outside, the Great Depression is crushing America like a boot on dry leaves. Inside, an elderly woman named Laura Ingalls Wilder is holding a book with her name on the cover. The title reads, Little House in the Big Woods. It's her first published book. She's 65 years old. The book is beautiful. The pages are crisp. The illustrations are charming. Children across America are already falling in love with it. But here's what those children don't know. Here's what nobody knows. Laura didn't write this book alone. Sitting across from her, in the same room, is her daughter Rose Wilder Lane, professional journalist, ghostwriter. One of the highest paid female writers in America. Rose's hands are ink-stained. Her typewriter sits on the table between them. And those pages Laura is holding? Rose rewrote every single one. You're looking at them now, mother and daughter, in this quiet farmhouse. The silence between them is heavy. Not peaceful, heavy. Like something unspoken is sitting in the room with them, taking up space. Laura's face shows pride. Her book is published. Her name is on the cover. But there's something else in her expression. Something that looks almost like guilt. Rose's face is harder to read. She's smiling, but her eyes aren't. Her eyes look tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying weight nobody else can see. She's just helped her mother become a published author. She's used every skill she learned in 20 years of professional writing to transform Laura's rough manuscript into something publishable, and her name appears nowhere in the book. This is how it starts. This is where the secret begins. A secret that will last 90 years. A secret about who really wrote the Little House books. Let's go back 2 years. 1930. The stock market has crashed. Rose Wilder Lane, who was making thousands of dollars a year writing for national magazines, is watching her income collapse. Her mother Laura, living on a small farm in Missouri, has no money either. The farm barely produces enough to eat. They're desperate. Both of them. And desperate people make interesting decisions. Laura has an idea. She's always been a storyteller. She remembers her childhood on the frontier, Wisconsin, Kansas, Minnesota, South Dakota. Her family moved constantly, following her father Charles Ingalls as he searched for better land, better opportunities. Those memories are vivid. The smell of prairie grass, the sound of wolves howling at night, the taste of maple sugar candy her mother made in the Wisconsin woods. Laura thinks maybe she can write it down. Maybe someone will pay for pioneer stories. She sits at her kitchen table with a pencil and cheap paper. She starts writing. Her handwriting is neat, but her sentences are plain. She writes like someone telling a story to neighbours over coffee. Straightforward. Factual. She describes events the way they happened, one after another. No dramatic build-up. No carefully crafted scenes, just memories laid out in sequence. After months of work, she has a manuscript, 74,000 words. She calls it Pioneer Girl. It covers her entire childhood, from Wisconsin through her marriage to Almanzo Wilder. She's proud of it. She's never written anything this long before. She thinks it might sell. She sends it to publishers in New York, and she waits. The rejections come back one by one. Too flat, they say. Too factual. It reads like a diary, not a story. Nobody wants to publish a diary. The Depression has hit the publishing industry hard. Publishers are desperate for books that will sell. This manuscript, they tell her, won't sell. Laura is devastated. She's 63 years old. She thought she'd found a way to make money. Now she's failed. She writes to Rose, telling her about the rejections, asking for advice. Rose reads the manuscript, and she sees something Laura doesn't see. She sees potential, raw material. A story that could work if someone shaped it properly. Rose has spent 2 decades ghostwriting for celebrities, turning rough interviews into best-selling books. She knows how to take someone else's memories and transform them into compelling narrative. She's done it for Henry Ford, for Charlie Chaplin, for famous people who couldn't write but had stories worth telling. She proposes a collaboration. She'll rewrite Laura's manuscript, restructure it, add scenes, create dialogue, turn it from a flat memoir into vivid storytelling, and if it sells, they'll split the money. Laura's name will be on the cover. Rose's work will remain invisible. Laura agrees. She has no other options. She needs money. Rose needs money. And maybe, just maybe, this will work. Rose gets to work. She takes Laura's handwritten pages and starts typing. But she's not just retyping, she's rewriting. She's taking Laura's sentence, "We lived in the big woods of Wisconsin," and transforming it into something children will actually want to read. She adds sensory details. She creates scenes. She manufactures dialogue. She structures the narrative with the skills she's learned writing for magazines that pay by the word and demand reader engagement. The manuscript Laura wrote and the manuscript Rose creates are two completely different things. But only two people know that, and they're both keeping quiet. You're in Rose Wilder Lane's apartment in New York City. The year is 1931. The room smells like cigarette smoke and desperation. Rose is sitting at her typewriter, Laura's handwritten manuscript spread across the desk like an autopsy. She's reading her mother's words, and she's circling sentences with a red pencil. Lots of sentences. Here's what Laura wrote. Pa played the fiddle in the evenings. We ate cornbread and salt pork. Winter was cold. Here's what Rose types. When the fiddle sang in Pa's hands, the little house seemed to grow larger, warmer, as if the music itself had pushed back the winter darkness pressing against the windows. You see the difference? Laura reports. Rose creates. Laura tells you what happened. Rose makes you feel like you're there, and that difference is everything. Rose has been doing this kind of work since 1915. She started as a newspaper reporter in San Francisco, writing sensational stories that sold papers. Then she discovered ghostwriting. Celebrities and important people who had fascinating lives but couldn't string together a coherent sentence. They needed someone to transform their memories into books. Rose became that someone. She was expensive, she was good, and she was completely invisible. She ghostwrote Henry Ford's biography. The man who revolutionized American manufacturing couldn't write a decent paragraph to save his life. Rose interviewed him, took his rambling stories, and shaped them into a bestseller called Henry Ford's Own Story. Ford's name went on the cover. Rose's name went nowhere. She got paid. That was the deal. She did the same for Charlie Chaplin, for Jack London's widow, for a dozen other people whose stories were interesting, but whose writing skills were non-existent. Rose learned to inhabit other people's voices, to take their memories and make them readable. She was a professional ventriloquist, making other people's words sound better than they actually were, and now she's doing it for her mother. But this is different. This isn't some celebrity client she'll never see again. This is Laura, the woman who gave birth to her, the woman who, according to Rose's private journals, made her childhood miserable. The emotional complexity of this collaboration is something Rose will never fully untangle. Rose's journals, discovered decades later, reveal her resentment. She wrote that Laura was cold, emotionally withholding, critical. Rose lists grievances like someone keeping score. Mother never showed affection. Mother made me feel I could never do anything right. Mother hesitated to let me carry butter up from the spring because she feared I'd spill it. These aren't the wounds of childhood. These are the wounds of a lifetime. Rose is 44 years old when she starts rewriting Laura's manuscript. She's been carrying these feelings for 4 decades, and now she's using her professional skills to make her mother a success. The psychology of this is almost too complicated to examine directly. Like looking at the sun. It hurts if you stare too long. But Rose is professional. Whatever her personal feelings, she knows how to do this work. She takes Laura's flat, factual sentences and transforms them into vivid scenes. She adds dialogue Laura never wrote. She creates dramatic tension Laura never considered. She structures chapters with cliffhangers, hooks, emotional beats, all the techniques she learned writing for magazines that demand reader engagement. She also makes strategic decisions Laura didn't make. Laura's original manuscript, Pioneer Girl, covered her entire childhood through her marriage. It was an autobiography, too long, too sprawling, too adult. Rose suggests something different. Break it into smaller books. Focus each book on one period, one location. Aim them at children, not adults. Children's books were selling during the Depression. Adult memoirs weren't. Rose takes the Wisconsin section of Laura's manuscript and expands it into an entire book. She adds details Laura mentioned briefly and turns them into full scenes. She creates structure. She adds what publishers call narrative arc. Laura's manuscript was a straight line. Rose's version is a roller coaster. Up and down, tension and release, engagement and satisfaction. She also cleans up the messy parts. Laura's original manuscript included harsh realities, poverty, hunger. Her baby brother who died at 12 days old, the constant fear of starvation, the brutality of frontier life. Rose softens these elements. She doesn't remove them entirely, but she wraps them in nostalgia. She makes poverty look quaint instead of terrifying. She turns survival into adventure. This is partly market strategy. Children's book publishers in 1932 want wholesome stories. Stories that make the past look simpler, better, more innocent than the troubled present. Rose gives them exactly that. She knows what sells. But it's also ideology. Rose is developing political beliefs that will define her later life. She's moving toward libertarianism, toward a philosophy that celebrates individual self-reliance and distrusts government assistance. The pioneer story fits perfectly into this worldview. Look at these people. Surviving without government help. Look at this family, thriving through their own hard work and determination. Never mind the Homestead Act. Never mind the government land grants that made westward expansion possible. Rose is crafting a myth of pure self-sufficiency. And Laura reads Rose's revisions. Sometimes she objects. That's not how it happened, she writes in the margins. Pa didn't say that. But mostly she accepts the changes. Because Rose is the professional. Rose has sold books to major publishers. Rose knows what works. The manuscript that eventually becomes A Little House in the Big Woods is a collaboration. But it's an unequal collaboration. Laura provides the memories. Rose provides everything else. You're standing in the offices of Harper & Brothers Publishing House in New York City. The year is 1932. The air smells like ink and old leather bindings. The walls are lined with books that became American classics, and on an editor's desk sits a manuscript titled Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. The editor's name is Virginia Kirkus. She picks up the manuscript, starts reading, and within 3 pages she knows this is something special. The voice is clear, the storytelling is vivid. The scenes feel real without being preachy. Children will love this. Parents will buy it. This, she thinks, is exactly what America needs right now. It's April 1932. The Depression is in its 3rd year. Banks are failing. Unemployment is at 25%. Families are losing homes, farms, everything. People are desperate for stories that remind them of simpler times, of values that feel lost, of a version of America where hard work and family bonds could overcome any hardship. Little House in the Big Woods delivers exactly that message. It tells the story of a little girl named Laura living in Wisconsin in the 1870s. Her father hunts, her mother cooks. The family works together. They're poor, but they're happy. They have each other. They don't need much else. It's a fantasy of self-sufficiency that Depression-era Americans desperately want to believe in. Harper & Brothers offers Laura a contract. The advance is small, $500. Laura has never seen that much money at once in her life. She accepts immediately, signs the contract, sends a telegram to Rose. We did it. The book is published in April 1932. The reviews are enthusiastic. The New York Herald Tribune calls it a charming story of frontier life. The Saturday Review praises its authentic details and warm family relationships. Librarians recommend it. Teachers assign it. The Junior Literary Guild select it as a featured book, guaranteeing thousands of sales to schools. Within months, Little House in the Big Woods is a bestseller. Laura Ingalls Wilder, at age 65, has become a successful children's book author. Fan mail arrives at her farmhouse in Missouri. Children write to tell her they love the book. They ask questions about Pa's fiddle, about maple sugar candy, about what it was like to live in the big woods. Laura reads these letters with genuine pleasure. This is real. This is success. This is validation she never expected to receive. And Rose? Rose is in New York, working on her own projects. She's just published a novel called Let the Hurricane Roar. It's also about frontier life. It's also about self-reliance and survival. Critics notice the similarities between Rose's novel and Laura's children's book. Both came out in 1932 and 1933. Both tell stories about pioneers. Both celebrate the same values. But nobody asks if there's a connection. Nobody wonders if the same hand shaped both narratives. Rose's name is on her novel. Laura's name is on the children's book. They're mother and daughter, sure, but they're separate authors, right? The money from Little House starts coming in. Royalties. Not a fortune, but steady income. More than Laura has seen in years. She can pay bills, buy necessities. For the first time since the Depression started, she's not desperate. And Harper & Brothers is already asking about a sequel. Laura writes to Rose, "They want another book. What should I do?" Rose's response is immediate. "Write it. I'll help." The pattern is established. Laura will provide memories. Rose will transform them into publishable manuscripts. Laura's name will go on the covers. Rose's role will remain invisible. This is the moment when the secret becomes permanent. If Rose was going to claim credit, this would be the time. The first book is successful. She could negotiate with Harper & Brothers, demand recognition as co-author or editor. Her professional reputation would support that claim. But she doesn't. She stays silent. Why? The reasons are complicated. Partly it's money. If Rose is listed as co-author, the royalties get split officially. As it stands, Laura receives the publisher's payments, then shares informally with Rose. It's less transparent, but potentially more flexible. Partly it's professional calculation. Rose is working on her own books. She doesn't need credit for children's literature. Her reputation is in adult fiction and journalism. But partly it's something darker, something psychological. Rose is helping her mother succeed in a way Rose herself never fully succeeded. Rose has published novels. Rose has written for prestigious magazines. But Rose never achieved the widespread beloved status that Laura is starting to achieve with children and families. There's something bitter in that. Something Rose won't admit even to herself. And Laura? Laura never publicly acknowledges the extent of Rose's help. In interviews, she talks about writing in her farmhouse, about drawing on childhood memories, about the joy of storytelling. She mentions Rose occasionally, vaguely. "My daughter helped with some editing." That's all. The truth is much bigger than that, but the truth stays hidden. The book that sits on library shelves across America carries one name, Laura Ingalls Wilder, and that's how it will stay for 90 years. But the manuscripts tell a different story, and eventually someone will find them. The manuscript that arrives at Harper & Brothers in New York is not the manuscript Laura wrote. Let's be clear about that. What Laura handed to Rose in 1930 and what Rose mailed to publishers in 1931 are two fundamentally different documents. Same memories, different everything else. You're looking at Rose's apartment now. The year is 1931. The room is filled with paper. Laura's handwritten pages are stacked on one side of the desk. Rose's typed revisions are growing on the other side. And between them sits Rose's typewriter, clicking steadily through the transformation of one woman's memories into another woman's prose. Here's what Laura wrote, copied exactly from her original Pioneer Girl manuscript. "Pa played the fiddle in the evenings. We ate cornbread and salt pork. Winter was cold. The snow was deep. We stayed inside most days. Factual, accurate, completely flat. The kind of writing that gets rejected by every publisher in New York, which is exactly what happened." Here's what Rose typed. "Winter evenings, when the wind howled around the little house and snow piled high against the windows, Pa would take down his fiddle. The music filled the small cabin, making even the plainest supper of cornbread and salt pork taste like something special. Outside, the big woods slept under blankets of snow. Inside, the family was together, and that was all that mattered. Same information, completely different impact. Rose has added sensory details, created atmosphere, manufactured emotional resonance. She's turned a weather report into a scene you can feel. This is what Rose does, hour after hour, page after page. She takes Laura's plain sentences and rebuilds them with the techniques she learned ghostwriting for Henry Ford and Charlie Chaplin. She knows how to make flat material sing. She's been doing it professionally for 15 years, but here's where it gets complicated. Rose isn't just polishing Laura's prose, she's adding things Laura never wrote, entire conversations, dramatic scenes, details that may or may not have happened exactly as Rose describes them. Laura wrote, "Ma made cheese in the spring." That's it. One sentence. No details, no process, just a statement of fact. Rose expands this into 3 full pages. She describes the entire cheese-making process in vivid sensory detail. The smell of the milk heating, the texture of the curds, the taste of fresh cheese on warm bread. Ma's hands working the cheese press. Laura watching, learning, helping. Dialogue between mother and daughter about women's work and pioneer survival. Where did Rose get these details? Partly from Laura's verbal descriptions, partly from research, partly from her own imagination. The final published version contains information that exists nowhere in Laura's original manuscript. Rose has created content, not just edited it. The question scholars will argue about for 90 years is this: does adding this level of detail constitute ghostwriting? Or is it just really aggressive editing? Rose would call it editing. She's taking Laura's memories and making them accessible to readers. She's not inventing the cheese-making, it happened. She's just describing it in ways Laura couldn't or didn't. But critics will point out that when you manufacture dialogue Laura never wrote, when you create scenes Laura only mentioned in passing, when you impose narrative structure Laura never conceived, you've crossed the line from editing into authorship. The letters between Laura and Rose during this period reveal the tension. Laura sometimes pushes back. She writes notes in the margins of Rose's typed pages. This isn't quite right. Pa didn't say that. This happened differently. But mostly Laura accepts Rose's changes. Because Rose is the professional. Rose knows what publishers want. Rose has connections Laura doesn't have. In one letter from 1937, Laura writes to Rose, "You know your judgment is better than mine, so what you think is the thing to do." That sentence, preserved in the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library archives, tells you everything about the power dynamic in this collaboration. Laura has surrendered creative control. She trusts Rose's expertise over her own memories, but there's something else happening here. Something psychological. Rose isn't just helping her mother get published. Rose is proving something. To herself. To Laura. To the world. She's demonstrating that she's the superior writer, that Laura's success depends entirely on Rose's skills. Remember, this is the woman who wrote in her private journal about her mother's coldness, about feeling inadequate as a child, about never being good enough. Now, Rose is literally rewriting her mother's life story, making it better than Laura could make it herself. There's power in that, and maybe, just maybe, a little revenge. Laura's handwriting fills cheap notebooks, simple words, plain sentences, the voice of a woman who never finished high school, who spent her life on failing farms, who watched poverty destroy her family over and over. It's authentic. It's raw. It's completely unmarketable in Depression-era New York. Rose's typewriter transforms those notebooks into literature. Professional prose, marketable narrative. The kind of writing that sells books and builds careers. It's skillful. It's commercial. It's not entirely Laura's anymore. This is how the Little House books are actually created. Not by one author in a farmhouse. By 2 women in different rooms with different skills, fighting over every sentence while pretending to agree. There's a famous scene in Little House in the Big Woods. Pa comes home from town with gifts for the girls. Laura gets a peppermint stick. Mary gets a peppermint stick. Baby Carrie gets nothing because she's too young. The scene is charming, heartwarming, perfect for a children's book. Parents have been reading it to their kids for 90 years. Here's the problem. That scene doesn't exist in Laura's original manuscript. You're holding both versions now. Laura's handwritten pioneer girl on the left. Rose's published Little House in the big woods on the right. You can see the differences immediately. Laura mentions that Pa occasionally brought candy from town. One sentence. Passing reference. No details. No scene. No dialogue. Rose takes that one sentence and builds an entire chapter around it. She creates the anticipation, the waiting, the girls' excitement when they hear Pa's wagon approaching, the ceremony of him reaching into his pocket, the taste of the peppermint, the sweetness on their tongues, the way special treats felt when you were poor and sugar was expensive. It's beautiful writing, genuinely moving, the kind of scene that makes children love books. But it's Rose's invention, not Laura's memory. This happens throughout the entire Little House series. Rose doesn't just polish Laura's prose. She manufactures entire scenes from single sentences. She creates dialogue from vague references. She builds dramatic moments from Laura's flat statements of fact. Laura wrote, "We were scared of the panther that screamed in the woods at night." One sentence, factual. True. A panther did scream near their cabin. The family was frightened. That's what happened. Rose transforms this into a full dramatic scene. Night has fallen. The family sits by the fire. Suddenly a terrible scream pierces the darkness. Ma's face goes white. Pa grabs his gun. The girls huddle together, terrified. The panther screams again. Closer this time. Pa explains what it is, why it's dangerous, what could happen if it attacks. The tension builds. The fear is palpable. Finally, the panther moves away and the family breathes again. It's gripping storytelling. It keeps children reading. It makes the pioneer experience feel real and immediate. But where did the dialogue come from? Where did the specific details about Ma's expression and Pa's reaction come from? Not from Laura's manuscript, from Rose's imagination. The scholar William Holtz spent years comparing Laura's original manuscripts with the published books. What he found shocked the Little House fan community when he published it in 1993. Holtz estimated that Rose added, changed, or significantly rewrote approximately 40% of the final published content. 40%. That's not editing. That's co-authoring at minimum, ghostwriting at maximum. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Sometimes Rose's additions make the story better, more accurate, more emotionally true, even when they're not factually precise. Laura's memory wasn't perfect. She was writing about events from 60 years earlier. She misremembered dates. She conflated different incidents. She forgot details that Rose researched and restored. In some cases, Rose's inventions are actually historically accurate details that Laura had forgotten. For example, Laura vaguely remembered her mother making butter. She wrote a brief paragraph about it. Rose researched 19th century butter-making techniques, consulted period sources, and created a detailed step-by-step description of the entire process. The published version is more historically accurate than Laura's hazy memory, even though Rose wrote it. So who's the author here? The woman who lived it but can't quite remember it? Or the woman who researched it and described it accurately even though she wasn't there? The collaboration letters, preserved in archives at the Detroit Public Library and the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library, show Laura and Rose negotiating over these changes. Laura sometimes objects. She writes, "The button lamp didn't look like that." Or, "We didn't have a glass window that year. It was paper." Rose responds by defending her changes, explaining that the dramatic version works better for narrative flow, or that her research shows this is what typical Wisconsin cabins had. Sometimes Laura wins these arguments, sometimes Rose wins, often they compromise. The final published books represent not one woman's vision, but a negotiated settlement between two strong-willed women with different priorities. Laura prioritizes factual accuracy. She wants the books to represent what actually happened, exactly as she remembers it. She's writing memoir, preserving family history for future generations. Rose prioritizes narrative effectiveness. She wants the books to sell, to engage readers, to build a sustainable income stream. She's writing commercial children's literature, crafting an entertaining product for Depression-era families. These goals conflict constantly, and the published Little House books bear the scars of that conflict in every chapter. There's another issue nobody talks about. Rose is systematically removing content Laura included. Harsh content, uncomfortable content, content that doesn't fit the wholesome pioneer narrative Depression-era publishers want to sell. Laura's original manuscript includes profanity. Her father cursing when things go wrong, neighbours using rough language, the crude speech patterns of 19th century frontiersmen. Rose cuts all of it, too offensive for children's literature. Laura describes poverty in brutal terms, hunger that makes your stomach hurt, winters when they genuinely didn't know if they'd have enough food to survive, the shame of wearing patched, threadbare clothes. Rose softens this. She makes poverty look quaint, challenging but manageable, character building rather than soul-crushing. Laura mentions violence, drunken men fighting in town, domestic disputes, the constant threat of injury and death on the frontier. Rose removes or minimises these references. The published Little House books show a frontier that's adventurous but fundamentally safe. Laura's manuscript shows a frontier that kills people regularly. The woman who reads Little House in the Big Woods to her children in 1932 is not reading Laura's memories. She's reading Rose's version of Laura's memories, sanitized, dramatized, ideologically shaped, commercially optimized, and she has no idea. There's a lie at the heart of the Little House books, a beautiful, carefully constructed lie that millions of Americans believe to this day. The lie is this: pioneer families succeeded through pure self-reliance, without any government help, proving that individuals don't need collective support to thrive. It's a compelling story. It's also historically false. You're looking at Laura's original manuscript again, and buried in her straightforward factual account is something Rose will systematically erase. Laura mentions the Homestead Act, the federal government program that gave her father Charles Ingalls free land. 160 acres in Kansas, 160 acres in Dakota Territory, free, provided by the United States government to encourage westward settlement. That's how the Ingalls family got their land. Not through pure self-reliance, through government assistance, a massive federal program that transferred millions of acres of land stolen from indigenous peoples, but that's another story Rose definitely won't tell, to white settlers at no cost. Laura's manuscript states this plainly. Pa filed a homestead claim. She understands that government policy made her family's western migration possible. She's not making an ideological point. She's just describing what happened. Rose cuts this. In the published books, the Homestead Act is barely mentioned. When it appears at all, it's described vaguely, as if the land just became available through some natural process rather than deliberate government intervention. The impression readers get is that Pa Ingalls claimed land through his own initiative and hard work, not through a federal giveaway program. This isn't accidental. This is Rose's libertarian ideology reshaping her mother's memories into political argument. By the early 1930s, Rose is developing the political philosophy that will define her later career. She's moving away from her earlier progressive beliefs. She once flirted with socialism toward a rigid anti-government stance. She's reading right-wing economic theory. She's corresponding with other thinkers who believe government intervention in the economy is fundamentally destructive. She's becoming one of the intellectual architects of American libertarianism, though that term won't be widely used for another 20 years, and she's using her mother's pioneer stories to illustrate her political beliefs. The Little House books become, in Rose's hands, arguments for radical individualism. Look at this family, the books say. Look how they survived without government programs, without social safety nets, without collective support. This is what Americans can do when government gets out of the way. Except it's not true. The Ingalls family received enormous government assistance, free land through the Homestead Act, military protection from the US Army, which fought wars against indigenous nations to clear territory for white settlement, government-funded railroads that made western migration feasible, township surveys conducted by federal employees, legal systems established and maintained by territorial governments. Laura knew all this. She lived it. But Rose edits it out, leaving only the image of heroic self-sufficiency. There's another ideological distortion Rose introduces. In Laura's original manuscript, the family fails. Repeatedly. Pa's schemes don't work. Crops fail. They run out of money. They have to move again and again, fleeing debts and failed dreams. Laura's memoir is, in many ways, a story of economic failure masked by family loyalty and survival. Rose transforms this into triumph. In the published books, hardships are temporary challenges that build character. Setbacks are learning opportunities. Poverty is portrayed as a choice to live simply rather than the grinding reality of having no other options. The family's constant moves aren't desperate flights from failure. They're adventures, explorations, manifestations of American pioneer spirit. This reframing serves Rose's ideological agenda perfectly. If poverty is character building rather than crushing, then government programs to alleviate poverty are unnecessary. If failure is just a stepping stone to eventual success, then social safety nets are wasteful. If individuals can overcome any hardship through determination, then collective support systems are counterproductive. The Little House books, as published, promote a specific political worldview: individual responsibility over collective action, family bonds over community support, self-reliance over government assistance. These aren't just stories, they're political philosophy disguised as children's literature. Laura either doesn't notice or doesn't object. The letters between mother and daughter rarely discuss ideology directly. Laura seems focused on factual accuracy, whether specific events happened as Rose describes them. She doesn't appear to recognise that Rose is systematically reshaping the political meaning of her memories. Or maybe she agrees. Laura's own newspaper columns from the 19-teens and 20s show conservative political leanings. She's sceptical of government programs, critical of welfare, supportive of individual initiative. Rose isn't imposing completely foreign beliefs onto her mother's story. She's amplifying beliefs Laura already holds, making them more explicit and more central to the narrative. But there's a difference between Laura's practical conservatism, born from lived experience on the economic margins, and Rose's ideological libertarianism, which is theoretical, absolutist, and increasingly extreme. By 1943, Rose will send a postcard to the Social Security Administration, calling their program a Ponzi scheme and declaring herself subversive as hell. Laura never goes that far. She pays her taxes. She accepts some government services. She's conservative, not radical. Yet the books that bear Laura's name reflect Rose's radicalism more than Laura's pragmatism. The pioneer mythology Rose constructs becomes gospel for generations of American conservatives. The Little House books are cited in political speeches, referenced in policy debates, used as evidence that Americans don't need government help because our ancestors didn't need it either. Except they did. The Ingalls family survival depended on government programs, government infrastructure, and government violence against indigenous peoples. That truth is buried under Rose's careful editing. And 30 million American children, reading these books in schools across the country, learn a version of history that serves Rose's political agenda while erasing the complex reality Laura actually lived. The manuscript Laura wrote told the truth. The books Rose published tell a myth, and the myth is what America remembers. The second book is harder. That's what Rose writes in a letter to a friend in 1933. Harder than the first. The relationship is straining. The collaboration that seemed so productive with Little House in the Big Woods is showing cracks. You're watching them now, Laura and Rose sitting at the same kitchen table in the Mansfield farmhouse. It's 1934. They're working on the third book on the banks of Plum Creek. Rose has Laura's handwritten pages spread in front of her, and for the first time she's visibly frustrated. Laura has been pushing back, harder than before. She reads Rose's revisions and writes sharp notes in the margins. This didn't happen this way. Pa never said that. You're making this too dramatic. The accommodating mother who trusted Rose's judgment in 1931 is gone. In her place is a woman defending her memories against her daughter's constant revisions. Rose is equally frustrated. She spent 3 years transforming Laura's rough drafts into best-selling children's books. The first book succeeded. The second book, Farmer Boy, told Almanzo's childhood story and also sold well. Rose knows what works. She knows what publishers want. She knows what readers expect. And Laura keeps objecting to changes that Rose considers essential. The tension isn't just professional, it's personal. It's 67 years of unresolved mother-daughter conflict surfacing through arguments about sentence structure and historical accuracy. Every edit Rose makes carries the weight of childhood resentment. Every objection Laura raises carries the weight of maternal authority being challenged. In one particularly revealing letter from 1935, Rose writes to her friend Dorothy Thompson, "Working with Mum Elaine is like trying to teach a mule to dance. She resists everything, then complains when the results aren't good enough." The contempt in that sentence is striking. This isn't professional frustration. This is deep personal antagonism, barely contained by professional necessity. Laura's letters from the same period are more measured but equally telling. She writes to Rose, "I know you're the expert, but these are my memories, not yours. I lived this. You didn't." There's hurt in those words. A mother watching her daughter rewrite her life story and feeling increasingly powerless to stop it. The specific fights reveal the deeper tensions. Rose wants to add a scene where young Laura nearly drowns in Plum Creek. It's dramatic. It creates suspense. Children will love it. But Laura objects. "I never nearly drowned. I waded in the creek. That's all. Why do you need to make everything more dangerous than it was?" Rose's response is pure professional writer. Because I waded in the creek doesn't hold reader attention. I almost drowned does. We're writing books, not depositions. She's not wrong. From a commercial standpoint, Rose is absolutely correct. Children's literature requires drama, tension, stakes. But Laura isn't thinking commercially. She's thinking about truth, about legacy, about what story her grandchildren will read about their family, the compromise they reach. Laura does wade into deep water, gets scared, but doesn't actually nearly drown. Satisfies neither woman. It's too dramatic for Laura's comfort, too mild for Rose's taste. It's a collaboration dying under the weight of incompatible goals. By late 1935, something breaks. The exact details are unclear because both women were private about family conflicts. But letters to third parties suggest a significant falling out. Rose begins making plans to leave Missouri, to buy a house in Connecticut, to establish permanent distance from her parents. In public statements years later, Rose describes the move as a desire for independence. She's nearly 50 years old. She wants her own space. A reasonable explanation. But the timing suggests something deeper. She leaves Missouri right in the middle of the Little House collaboration, right when tensions with Laura are at their peak. The move to Danbury, Connecticut, happens in 1937. Rose buys a small farmhouse, 30 acres. Far enough from Missouri that she can't easily visit her parents. Close enough to New York that she can maintain her publishing connections. It's a strategic retreat, a physical manifestation of emotional distance. From this point forward, the collaboration happens through the mail. Laura writes her manuscripts by hand in Missouri, mails them to Rose in Connecticut. Rose types her revisions, mails them back. They negotiate through letters rather than face-to-face conversations. It changes everything. Without direct contact, the fights become more formal, more polite on the surface, more bitter underneath. Laura can't see Rose's facial expressions when she reads criticism. Rose can't gauge Laura's emotional state when defending her editorial choices. The letters preserve only words, not tone, not context, not the 1,000 small signals that help people navigate difficult conversations. The books they produced during this period, By the Shores of Silver Lake, The Long Winter, Little Town on the Prairie, are noticeably different in tone from the earlier books. They're still good, still commercially successful, but they lack some of the warmth and intimacy of Little House in the Big Woods. Scholars who study the series closely can identify the shift. The later books feel more formal, more distant, as if the collaboration itself has gone cold. Rose's editorial interventions become less aggressive, not because she's changed her philosophy, but because managing the collaboration by mail is simply harder. She can't sit with Laura, point to specific sentences, argue through revisions in real time. She has to pick her battles. Accept more of Laura's original wording, trust that her structural guidance is enough even when the prose isn't as polished as she'd prefer. Laura, for her part, seems to gain confidence. Her later manuscripts require less extensive revision. She's learned Rose's techniques. She's absorbed lessons about scene building, dialogue, dramatic pacing. She's still not writing at Rose's professional level, but she's closer than she was in 1930. The postman in Mansfield, Missouri knows Laura Ingalls Wilder's handwriting by now. Large manila envelopes, addressed to Miss Rose Wilder Lane, Danbury, Connecticut. They arrive at the post office every few months. Always the same thing, manuscript pages, another chapter, another round in the collaboration that neither woman can quite quit. You're holding one of these letters now. It's dated March 1938. Laura's handwriting covers cheap notebook paper. She's written the draft for what will become part of the long winter. The terrible winter of 1880 to 1881, when blizzards struck the Dakota Territory every few days for months, when the railroad couldn't get through, when the little town of De Smet nearly starved. Laura's description is stark. We were hungry. Pa twisted hay into sticks to burn because we had no coal. We ground wheat in the coffee mill to make bread. We thought we might die. Factual, direct, terrifying in its simplicity. 3 weeks later, the envelope comes back. Rose's typed revision transforms Laura's plain sentences into dramatic narrative. She's added dialogue, created scenes, built tension page by page. The hunger isn't just stated, it's experienced. Pa's worry isn't mentioned. It's shown through his actions, his silences, his desperate attempts to keep his family's spirits up while their food supplies dwindle. But there's a note clipped to the manuscript. Rose is typing on Harper & Brothers letterhead. Mama, I've softened the starvation somewhat. Children's book editors won't accept this level of grimness. We need to show hardship without traumatizing young readers. Trust me on this. Rose. Laura reads this note, and you can almost see her sitting at her kitchen table in Missouri, 71 years old, holding her daughter's revision of her own near-death experience, and wondering whose story this is anymore. She writes back. Her response, preserved in the archives at the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library. Rose, we really did nearly starve. This isn't exaggeration. Shouldn't children know how hard it was? Ma. Rose's reply comes 2 weeks later. They should know it was hard. They shouldn't have nightmares. There's a difference between historical accuracy and age-appropriate storytelling. We're writing for 8-year-olds, not historians are. This exchange captures the entire problem with their long-distance collaboration. Laura is trying to preserve truth. Rose is trying to sell books. Both goals are legitimate. Both goals are incompatible. The mail system becomes their mediator. The US Postal Service, unwittingly, becomes the third party in a creative partnership that can no longer function face-to-face. Letters take days to arrive. Responses take days to return. What used to be resolved in an afternoon of conversation now takes weeks of correspondence. The delays change the work. In the early books, Rose could sit with Laura and negotiate immediate compromises. What if we keep this detail but remove that one? What if we show the hunger through Ma's face rather than describing it directly? Real-time collaboration, with all its friction and all its creative energy. Now every disagreement takes a month to resolve. Laura makes a suggestion, waits for Rose's response, reads Rose's counter-suggestion, waits to reply. By the time they reach consensus, weeks have passed. The emotional momentum is lost. The creative spark has faded. Rose is also working on her own projects. She's writing articles, working on novels. She's just published Freeland in 1938, her own frontier novel that critics immediately compare to the Little House books. Some reviewers notice the similarities in style and theme. Nobody yet asks if there's a connection beyond genetics. her attention is divided. The Little House books, which used to be her primary focus during the early collaboration, are now one project among several. She still edits Laura's manuscripts carefully, but with less intensity, less obsessive revision. She's tired of fighting, tired of the emotional labour of managing her mother's expectations while maintaining professional standards. Laura notices. The manuscripts come back faster than they used to, with fewer changes. Rose's editorial notes are shorter, more perfunctory. Less of the detailed explanation and passionate defence of editorial choices. More "this works," or "change this" without elaborate justification. It should make Laura happy. She's getting more of her original vision preserved in the published books, but instead, she feels abandoned. Rose's intensive editing was frustrating, but it was also attention. Proof that Rose cared about the project. Now the reduced involvement feels like neglect. In 1939, Laura writes to Rose, "You don't seem as interested in these books anymore. Should we stop? Should I finish the series on my own?" The vulnerability in that question is striking. Laura is 72 years old, a published author with 3 successful books to her name, and she's still asking her daughter's permission to continue. Rose's response is immediate and sharp. "Don't be ridiculous. You need me. You know you need me. Your drafts are better than they used to be, but they're still not publishable without my work. We'll finish the series, but you need to trust my judgment and stop fighting every change." There it is. The core dynamic. Laura's insecurity, Rose's arrogance, the mother who gave birth to the daughter who gave birth to the books, both women trapped in a collaboration neither one can control alone, neither one can escape without consequences. The letters continue, back and forth, Missouri to Connecticut, Connecticut to Missouri, manuscript pages travelling 1,000 miles, getting revised, travelling back. It's inefficient. It's emotionally exhausting. It's the only way they can work together without destroying each other. By 1941, they've fallen into a rhythm, Laura writes. Rose edits. They argue through letters. They compromise through mail. The books get published, the checks get cashed. And neither woman mentions to anyone outside the family how much work Rose is actually doing. May 1943. Laura Ingalls Wilder is 76 years old. She's holding the final book of the Little House series, These Happy Golden Years. The title is Rose's suggestion. Laura wanted something simpler, more straightforward, but Rose insisted on happy and golden, words that signal nostalgia and warmth to depression-weary readers who are now also war-weary readers. World War II is raging. American boys are dying in Europe and the Pacific. And here's a book about a teenage girl in the 1880s teaching school, courting Almanzo Wilder, getting married. It's escapism. A window into a simpler time that probably wasn't actually simpler, but that's what readers need right now. That's what publishers are selling. Safety, comfort, the promise that American values survive hardship. The book ends with Laura's marriage. She's 18 in the final pages. The series is complete. 8 books covering her life from early childhood through young adulthood. The first book came out 11 years ago. Laura has spent over a decade writing and rewriting her memories with her daughter's constant intervention. She's exhausted. The letters she writes to Rose during the final edits of These Happy Golden Years show it. Her handwriting is shakier than it used to be. Her sentences are shorter. She makes more spelling errors, which she never used to do. She's aging, and the work of maintaining this collaboration, even at a distance, has worn her down. Rose is tired too. She's 56 years old. She's spent 13 years editing her mother's manuscripts, arguing about historical details, negotiating over every dramatic scene and manufactured dialogue. She's published 3 of her own novels during this same period. She's written hundreds of articles. She's become a nationally recognised voice in libertarian political circles, and she's still helping her mother get books published. In the final exchange of letters about These Happy Golden Years, there's a sense of relief on both sides. Laura writes, "I'm glad we're finished. I don't think I have another book in me." Rose replies, "The series is complete. You've told your story. It's enough." Neither woman explicitly says they're ending the collaboration. They don't need to. It's understood. The story Laura set out to tell is told. The commercial opportunity has been exploited. The relationship has survived barely under the strain. It's time to stop. But here's what neither woman knows in 1943. They're not actually finished. There's one more manuscript, one more book. But it won't be published for another 28 years. And when it finally appears, it will become the most important piece of evidence in the authorship controversy. Laura has written a 9th book. She calls it The First 4 Years. It covers the early years of her marriage to Almanzo, the years when everything went wrong, crop failures, debt, their baby son dying at 12 days old, their house burning down, Almanzo getting sick with diphtheria, partially paralysed, the brutal reality of trying to establish a farm on the Dakota Prairie in the 1880s. It's the darkest thing Laura has ever written. Darker than anything Rose would allow in the published Little House series. There's no nostalgia here, no happy pioneer mythology. Just failure, loss, and the grinding hardship of people trying to survive when everything conspires against them. Laura writes this manuscript entirely on her own. She doesn't send it to Rose, doesn't ask for editorial help, doesn't negotiate revisions. She writes it in her farmhouse in Missouri, puts it in a drawer, and never mentions it to anyone. Why? The answer is complicated. Maybe she's finally asserting independence, proving to herself that she can write without Rose's constant intervention. Maybe she knows Rose would object to the content, would soften it, would transform it into something more palatable. And Laura wants this story preserved exactly as she remembers it. Maybe it's too personal, too painful, too raw to expose to Rose's professional editing. Or maybe, and this is the darkest possibility, Laura writes it as evidence. Proof of what her writing looks like without Rose's help. A control sample for future scholars who might ask, who really wrote the Little House books? We'll never know. Laura never explains her reasoning. She just writes the manuscript approximately 40,000 words and puts it away. It sits in that drawer for the rest of her life. 14 years, untouched, unrevised, secret. When she dies in 1957 at age 90, the manuscript is discovered among her papers. Rose inherits it. Rose reads it, and Rose doesn't publish it. Rose keeps the manuscript for another 11 years, through her own old age, through her increasingly radical political activism, through her final trip to Vietnam at age 78, through her death in 1968. And when Rose dies, the manuscript passes to Roger Lee MacBride, the young man she considered her adopted grandson. Roger reads it, and in 1971 he publishes it, exactly as Laura wrote it. No editing, no revisions, no Rose. The difference is immediately obvious to anyone who reads the series. The first 4 years doesn't sound like the other Little House books. The prose is simpler, the dramatic pacing is absent, the scenes are less vivid, the dialogue is minimal and awkward. It reads exactly like Laura's original Pioneer Girl manuscript from 1930. It's proof, physical, published proof that Laura without Rose produces fundamentally different work than Laura with Rose. The authorship question, which had been simmering quietly in academic circles for decades, explodes into open controversy when scholars get their hands on the first 4 years, because now they can compare. Laura's solo work versus the collaboration, and the differences are impossible to ignore, but that's all in the future. In 1943, Laura and Rose are just relieved to be finished. The series is complete, the collaboration can finally end. They can return to being mother and daughter instead of author and editor, except they'll never be just mother and daughter again. Too much has happened, too much resentment has accumulated, too many fights over commas and character motivation have poisoned the relationship beyond repair. The books are everywhere. That's what Laura notices first. It's 1946. She's 79 years old, and everywhere she goes in Mansfield, Missouri, people recognize her name. The librarian shows her the waiting list for the long winter. 15 families. The bookstore has sold out of Littletown on the Prairie 3 times this month. Letters arrive daily from children asking questions about Pa's fiddle, about Mary's blindness, about whether the stories are really true. Laura sits in her farmhouse reading these letters. Her hands shake slightly. Age. the arthritis that comes from decades of hard farm work. She reads a letter from a girl in Pennsylvania who says the Little House books are her favourite stories in the whole world. The girl wants to know what happened after Laura married Almanzo. She wants more books, more stories. She doesn't want the series to end. Laura doesn't tell her that the series has already ended, that the last book, These Happy Golden Years, came out 3 years ago, that there won't be more books because Laura can't face another collaboration with Rose. Can't endure another round of editorial battles fought through the mail. Can't watch her memories get transformed one more time into something she barely recognises. The success came too late. That's what Laura thinks, but never says aloud. She's almost 80 years old. The money from the books is steady now. Royalty checks arrive quarterly, enough to make her and Almanzo comfortable for the first time in their 60-year marriage. But what can you do with money at 80? They're too old to travel, too old to rebuild, too old to enjoy the financial security they spent their entire lives chasing. Almanzo is 90 years old in 1946. He can barely walk. The diphtheria he contracted in 1888 left him partially paralysed. 60 years later, he shuffles around their farmhouse, leaning on furniture, moving slowly from room to room. He doesn't read the fan letters, doesn't engage with the Little House phenomenon. He just tends his few remaining animals and waits. The books have made Laura famous in a way she never imagined. Schools assign them, libraries feature them, the Junior Literary Guild promotes them. Educators praise them for teaching American values and pioneer spirit. Parents buy them for their children, wanting to pass on stories of self-reliance and family bonds. But Laura is invisible inside her own fame. She's the author, but nobody knows her. They know the little girl from the books, Laura Ingalls, age 6, 9, 12. They don't know Laura Ingalls Wilder at 80, arthritic, exhausted, watching her husband slowly die. She gives occasional interviews, local newspapers, regional magazines. She tells them about her pioneer childhood, about Pa's fiddle, about life in the big woods. She describes the books as her memories, written down for children. She mentions Rose only in passing. My daughter helped with some editing. That's all, the standard line, the agreed-upon story. Nobody asks follow-up questions. Nobody investigates. The 1940s aren't an era of aggressive literary journalism. Authors' private lives remain private. If Laura says she wrote the books, people believe her. Why wouldn't they? Rose in Connecticut is living her own separate life. She's writing political articles, building her reputation as a libertarian intellectual. She's corresponding with other anti-government thinkers, developing the philosophy that will eventually make her one of the founding mothers of American libertarianism, alongside Ayn Rand and Isabel Patterson. In 1943, Rose publishes The Discovery of Freedom, her manifesto about individual liberty and the dangers of government power. It's the culmination of everything she's been thinking since her trip to Soviet Russia in 1921. The book argues that human progress comes from individual initiative, not collective action. That government is inherently oppressive, that freedom requires constant vigilance against state power. The libertarian community embraces it, but mainstream critics ignore it. The book sells poorly. America is in the middle of World War II. The country is united behind a massive government mobilization. Rose's anti-government message feels tone-deaf, unpatriotic, dangerous. Rose is bitter about the reception. She's spent decades developing these ideas. She believes she's written something important, and the public doesn't care. Meanwhile, the Little House books, which she edited, shaped, and arguably co-wrote, are selling steadily under her mother's name. Rose gets no public credit, no recognition, just private royalty payments negotiated between mother and daughter. Does Rose regret the invisibility? Her letters from this period suggest ambivalence. Sometimes she seems content with the arrangement. She's proud of helping her mother succeed, proud of creating books that teach children about self-reliance and American values. The books promote the same ideology she's pushing in The Discovery of Freedom, just wrapped in pioneer nostalgia instead of political theory. But other times, the resentment surfaces. In a letter to a friend in 1947, Rose writes, "I've spent my career making other people's words readable, Fords, chaplains, mothers. When do I get to be known for my own work? It's a rare moment of honesty, a glimpse of the frustration she usually keeps hidden. Laura doesn't know about this letter, doesn't know about Rose's private resentments. Or maybe she does know and chooses not to acknowledge it. The two women maintain their relationship through formal correspondence, polite letters about family matters, careful avoidance of anything too emotional or confrontational. The collaboration is over, the books are published, the secret is kept. And both women are getting old, carrying their unresolved conflicts toward graves that are getting closer every year. October 23rd, 1949. You're standing in the bedroom of Rocky Ridge Farmhouse. The curtains are drawn. The room smells like medicine and old age. Almanzo Wilder is dying. He's 92 years old. He's been dying slowly for years, but today is the day it finally happens. Laura sits beside the bed. She's 82. Her hand rests on Almanzo's. His breathing is shallow, irregular. Each breath sounds like effort, like his body is trying to remember how to do something it's done automatically for 92 years, and is finally forgetting. They've been married for 63 years. 63 years of shared poverty, shared failure, shared survival. They lost their infant son in 1889, lost their house to fire, lost crops to drought and hail, lost money to bad investments and worse luck. They survived it all together. And now, finally, Almanzo is letting go. Rose isn't here. She's in Connecticut. Laura called her when Almanzo's condition worsened, but Rose didn't come immediately. The relationship between mother and daughter has been distant for years. Formal. They exchange letters, birthday cards, news about royalties and book sales. But the warmth that might have existed in the early days of their collaboration is gone, replaced by polite duty. Rose will arrive 2 days after her father's death. She'll help with funeral arrangements. She'll stay in Mansfield for a week, handling estate matters, making sure her mother is settled. Then she'll return to Connecticut, back to her own life, her political activism, her writing. Her carefully constructed distance from the family that shaped her. But right now, in this moment, it's just Laura and Almanzo, the way it's been for 6 decades. His breathing stops, starts again, stops. This time, it doesn't start. Laura sits very still. She doesn't cry. Not yet. She's too shocked for tears. Almanzo has been old for so long, dying for so long, that his actual death feels almost surreal. Like something she knew was coming but never quite believed would arrive. She's the last one now. Her parents are long dead. Her sisters Mary and Carrie died in the 1920s and 30s. Her baby sister Grace died in 1941. Almanzo was the last connection to her adult life. The last person who remembered Laura Ingalls before she became Laura Ingalls Wilder, before she became the author of the Little House books. And now he's gone. The funeral is small. Mansfield, Missouri in 1949 is still a small town. People know Laura. They know Almanzo. They've watched the elderly couple living quietly on their farm, rarely socializing, keeping to themselves. Some people know about the books, some don't. Laura is famous in children's literature circles, but in Mansfield, she's just Mrs. Wilder, the old woman who lives on Rocky Ridge. Rose stands beside her mother at the graveside. They don't embrace, don't hold hands. They stand separately, united only by shared grief and 62 years of complicated history. Rose is 62 years old. Laura is 82. And between them is an entire library of unspoken resentments, unexpressed gratitude, and a secret about authorship that neither will ever fully reveal. After the funeral, Rose helps Laura sort through Almanzo's belongings. There isn't much. Farm equipment, old clothes, a few tools. Almanzo was never a man who accumulated possessions. He valued land, animals, practical things, not sentiment, not keepsakes. In a drawer, Rose finds letters, old letters from the 1880s and 90s, Almanzo's courtship letters to Laura, Laura's responses. Rose reads a few of them. Her father's handwriting, young and confident. Her mother's, neat and hopeful. They were children when they wrote these letters. Teenagers making promises about building a life together. Rose puts the letters back without comment. Some things are too private even for daughters. The conversation they have that week in Mansfield is formal. Laura asks about Rose's work. Rose asks about Laura's health. They discuss royalty statements. Book sales are steady. The Little House series has become a staple of American children's literature. Schools buy them. Libraries stock them. The checks keep coming. Rose asks if Laura wants to write more. Laura says no. She's too old. Too tired. And besides, the story is complete. She wrote her childhood. She wrote her courtship and marriage. What else is there to say? What Laura doesn't mention is the manuscript in her drawer. The first 4 years. The book she wrote alone. The book about the terrible early years of her marriage. The crop failures. The debt. The baby who died. The house that burned. The brutal reality that never made it into these happy golden years because it was too dark, too depressing, too honest. She wrote that manuscript years ago, maybe in the mid-1940s, maybe earlier. She never sent it to Rose. Never asked for editing, never mentioned it. It sits in a drawer, handwritten, unrevised. A secret manuscript about a secret time. The only Little House book Rose never touched. Why didn't Laura publish it? Why didn't she at least send it to Rose for editing? The answers are locked in Laura's mind. Maybe she wanted to prove she could write without Rose. Maybe she wanted one story that remained entirely hers. Maybe it was too painful to expose to Rose's editorial knife, too raw to let anyone reshape. Or maybe it's evidence, proof of what Laura's writing looks like without Rose's intervention. A control sample. Something future scholars can compare to the published books to see exactly how much Rose changed, how much Rose added, how much difference Rose made. Laura will never explain, and Rose, not knowing the manuscript exists, can't ask. When Rose leaves Mansfield a week after the funeral, she hugs her mother briefly. "Take care of yourself, Mama," she says. Laura nods. "You too, Rose." They don't say, "I love you." They never have. It's not their way. They express love through practical help, through shared work, through the books they created together. But the words themselves remain unspoken. Laura is alone now, truly alone for the first time in 63 years. The farmhouse is too quiet. That's what Laura thinks every morning when she wakes up. 7 years since Almanzo died. 7 years of living alone in the house they built together. The silence is oppressive. No footsteps, no coughing, no sound of Almanzo shuffling to the kitchen for breakfast. Just emptiness and the creak of old wood settling. It's 1956. Laura is 89 years old. She can barely walk. The arthritis has gotten worse. Her hands hurt constantly. Her vision is failing. She reads with difficulty, holding books close to her face, squinting at words that used to be clear. But the fan mail keeps coming. Stacks of letters from children who love the Little House books. They ask her questions. They tell her about their favourite scenes. They want to know what happened to Jack the dog, whether Mary ever got her sight back, whether Pa's fiddle still exists somewhere. Laura tries to answer them. She sits at her kitchen table with pen and paper, writing slowly in her shaky handwriting. She tells them the stories are true. She tells them Pa's fiddle is in a museum in South Dakota. She tells them she's glad they love the books. She doesn't tell them that half of what they're reading came from her daughter's imagination, not her memories. The secret has held for 24 years, since the first book in 1932. A quarter-century of public success built on private collaboration that nobody outside the family knows about. Laura has never publicly acknowledged the extent of Rose's involvement. Rose has never claimed credit. The arrangement works because both women maintain silence, but sometimes late at night Laura wonders what will happen when she dies. Will Rose finally tell the truth? Will someone discover the manuscripts and see the differences between Laura's handwritten originals and Rose's typed revisions? Will the secret survive Laura's death, or will it die with her? She thinks about the manuscript in her drawer. The first 4 years. The book she wrote without Rose, the evidence of what her writing looks like when nobody edits it, shapes it, improves it. Should she destroy it? Should she send it to Rose with instructions to publish it after her death? Should she leave it where it is and let fate decide? Laura does nothing. The manuscript stays in the drawer, the secret stays secret, and Laura gets older. By Thanksgiving 1956, she's noticeably declining. She's losing weight, having trouble eating. The doctor visits Rocky Ridge Farm and diagnoses diabetes and heart problems. At 89, there's not much to be done except make her comfortable and wait. Laura writes to Rose, "I don't think I have much time left. You should come visit if you want to see me again." The letter is matter of fact, no drama, no sentiment. Just practical acknowledgement of approaching death. Rose doesn't come immediately. She writes back, "I'll visit in the spring when the weather improves. Connecticut winters are hard to travel through." It's a reasonable excuse. Rose is 70 now. Travel is difficult. The trip from Connecticut to Missouri is long and tiring. But there's also something else in Rose's delay. An unwillingness to face her mother's death. A lifetime of unresolved conflict making it easier to stay away than to confront the end. Laura's condition worsens in late January 1957. She's hospitalized in Springfield, Missouri. The diagnosis is clear. Uncontrolled diabetes. Heart failure. Multiple organ systems shutting down. She's 90 years old. Her body is finished. She's sent home to Rocky Ridge Farm. There's nothing more the hospital can do. She wants to die in her own house, in the bedroom she shared with Almanzo, surrounded by the things she knows. Neighbours help. The woman from down the road comes daily to check on Laura, brings food Laura can't eat, sits with her so she's not alone. Mansfield is still a small town where neighbours take care of each other. Laura Ingalls. Wilder might be a famous author in New York publishing circles, but in Mansfield she's just the old lady who needs help. Rose finally comes. She arrives on February 7th, 1957, 3 days before Laura dies. She sits beside her mother's bed. They don't talk much. Laura is too weak, drifting in and out of consciousness. Rose holds her hand and watches her mother breathe. Does Rose think about the books during those 3 days? Does she think about the collaboration that defined both their lives for 13 years? Does she regret anything? Feel pride? Relief that it's almost over? We don't know. Rose never wrote about these final days with her mother. Never described what they said to each other, if they said anything at all. The moment is private, unrecorded, lost. Laura's 90th birthday is February 7th. She's unconscious most of the day, unaware that she's reached an age few people in her generation achieve. She lived through the frontier era, the Civil War aftermath, the Industrial Revolution, 2 world wars, the atomic age. She saw America transform from a rural agricultural nation to an industrial superpower. And she wrote it all down. Or rather, she and Rose wrote it down together. 3 days later, on February 10th, 1957, Laura Ingalls Wilder dies, quietly, peacefully, in her sleep. Rose is in the house when it happens. She doesn't cry, or if she does, nobody sees it. The obituaries describe Laura as the beloved author of the Little House books. They mention her pioneer childhood, her long marriage to Almanzo, her literary success. They mention Rose only as her surviving daughter. No mention of editing, no mention of collaboration. The secret holds even in death. Rose arranges a small funeral, buries her mother next to Almanzo in the Mansfield cemetery, stays in Missouri for 2 weeks to settle the estate, and then returns to Connecticut. She's 70 years old. Her mother is dead, and the manuscript in the drawer stays exactly where Laura left it. Rose returns to Connecticut carrying her mother's secret. It's March 1957. Laura has been dead for a month. The funeral is over, the estate is settled, and Rose is back in her farmhouse in Danbury, alone with 30 years of memories about a collaboration nobody else fully understands. You're watching her now, unpacking her suitcase from the Missouri trip. She's 70 years old. Her grey hair is pulled back in the same style she's worn for decades. Her hands move mechanically, hanging clothes, putting away toiletries. She's exhausted, not from travel, from grief that she doesn't quite know how to process. Because here's the complicated truth about Rose and Laura. Rose resented her mother for most of her life, wrote bitter journal entries about her coldness, fought with her over every editorial decision, kept physical and emotional distance between them for decades. And yet, Laura's death leaves a hole that Rose didn't expect to feel. She's an orphan now. Both parents gone, no siblings, no children of her own. Her infant son died in 1909, a loss she never fully recovered from. She has friends, political allies, professional colleagues, but no family, no one who shares her history, no one who remembers Rose Wilder Lane before she became Rose Wilder Lane. The Little House royalties continue. They're Laura's estate now, and Rose is the sole heir. The money arrives quarterly, steady income from books that Rose helped create but will never publicly claim credit for. It's strange compensation, payment for invisible labour, recognition without acknowledgement. Rose throws herself into political work. The 1950s are the height of the Cold War. America is gripped by fear of communist infiltration. Senator Joseph McCarthy is hunting for Soviet sympathizers. The House Un-American Activities Committee is interrogating suspected communists. It's an atmosphere of paranoia and accusation. Rose hates communism, has hated it since 1921 when she was interrogated by the Cheka in Soviet Russia. But she also hates McCarthyism, hates government power being used to destroy people's lives based on suspicion and innuendo. She finds herself in an ideologically complicated position, anti-communist but also anti-government surveillance. She writes articles defending civil liberties while condemning communist ideology. The libertarian movement is growing, slowly, a small network of intellectuals who believe government is inherently oppressive. That individual liberty is the highest political value, that free markets, not government programs, create prosperity. Rose is one of the intellectual founders of this movement, along with Ayn Rand and Isabel Patterson. But the movement is marginal, ignored by mainstream politics, dismissed by intellectuals. The 1950s are an era of government expansion. The interstate highway system, expanded social security, federal education programs. Eisenhower's moderate republicanism accepts big government as a permanent feature of American life. Rose's anti-government philosophy feels outdated, extremist, irrelevant. She keeps writing anyway. Articles for National Review and other conservative publications. Long letters to younger libertarian thinkers, mentoring them in the philosophy she's spent decades developing. She corresponds with economists, journalists, activists, building a network, planting seeds for a movement that won't bear fruit until after her death. And she never mentions the Little House books, never claims credit publicly, never explains her role. When journalists ask about her famous mother, Rose gives the same answer she's given for 25 years. I helped with some editing. Mother wrote the books. Why does she maintain the secret? Partly it's practical. If Rose publicly claims co-authorship now, she undermines Laura's legacy, makes Laura look like a fraud, makes the books less valuable because they're not authentic pioneer memories, but collaborative fiction. The commercial value of the Little House brand depends on the myth of Laura as sole author, but it's also emotional. Rose spent 13 years helping her mother achieve success, sacrifice credit for the sake of the collaboration. To claim that credit now, after Laura's death, would feel like betrayal, like stealing from a grave. Rose has complicated feelings about her mother, but she's not cruel. She maintains the secret out of loyalty, even if that loyalty comes mixed with resentment. In 1960, something happens that threatens the secret. A graduate student at a Midwestern university writes her master's thesis on the Little House books. She requests access to Laura's papers, which are now controlled by Rose. The student wants to see original manuscripts, compare drafts, study Laura's writing process. Rose panics. If scholars see the manuscripts, they'll see the extent of Rose's editorial intervention. They'll see Laura's plain handwriting transformed into Rose's polished prose. They'll ask questions Rose doesn't want to answer. She denies the request. tells the graduate student that the papers are private, family documents, not available for research. The student protests, argues that Laura was a public figure, that the papers have historical value. Rose refuses. The papers stay locked away. This pattern will repeat throughout the 1960s. Researchers ask for access. Rose denies them. The manuscripts remain hidden. The secret remains safe. And Rose becomes increasingly isolated, guarding her mother's legacy while simultaneously erasing her own contribution to it. She's 73 years old in 1960, living alone in Connecticut, still writing, still fighting, still carrying a secret that gets heavier every year. But Rose Wilder Lane has never been someone who gives up, and she's about to do something that will shock everyone who thinks she's too old to matter. August 1965. Rose Wilder Lane is 78 years old. Most women her age are in nursing homes or sitting in rocking chairs waiting for death. Rose is boarding a plane to Saigon to cover the Vietnam War for Woman's Day magazine. The editor who commissioned the assignment probably thought Rose was crazy. A 78-year-old woman, in a war zone, in tropical heat, in a country where American soldiers are dying daily. It's absurd, dangerous, completely inappropriate for someone Rose's age. Rose doesn't care. She spent her entire life defying expectations. She divorced in the 1920s when divorce was scandalous. She travelled alone to Soviet Russia and Albania when women didn't travel alone anywhere. She built a journalism career in an industry dominated by men. She became a ghostwriter, a novelist, a political theorist. And now, at 78, she's going to Vietnam. Why? The surface answer is professional. Woman's Day offered her the assignment. Rose needs money. She's always needed money. The Little House royalties help, but Rose has expensive tastes and libertarian principles that prevent her from accepting any government assistance like Social Security. She works because she has to, but the real answer is deeper. Rose believes in this war. She believes America is fighting totalitarian communism. She knows what communism does to people because she saw it firsthand in Soviet Russia in 1921. She was interrogated by the Cheka. She documented orphanages in Armenia in 1922, where children were starving under Bolshevik administration. She watched governments crush individuals in the name of collective good. Vietnam, in Rose's worldview, is the same battle. Communist North Vietnam, backed by the Soviet Union and China trying to conquer South Vietnam. Individual freedom versus totalitarian control. If America loses, the Vietnamese people lose their liberty. Rose can't let that happen without bearing witness. So she gets on a plane, travels halfway around the world, arrives in Saigon in the middle of a war. At 78 years old, the heat hits her like a physical force. Saigon in August is brutal, humid, oppressive, the kind of heat that makes breathing difficult. Rose has lived through harsh climates, the Ozarks in summer, Albania in drought, but this is different. This is Southeast Asian tropical heat combined with the smell of diesel fuel, street food, and fear. She interviews American soldiers, young men from Iowa and Texas and California, who look at this elderly woman with confusion. What is she doing here? Why does she care? Rose asks them about their missions, their experiences, why they enlisted, what they think about the war. She talks to Vietnamese civilians, merchants, translators, people trying to survive while war rages around them. She's impressed by their resilience, their refusal to give up despite years of conflict. She writes, "There is something in these people that isn't explained, something that does not give up, that is not conquered." It's the same observation she made about Armenian orphans 43 years earlier. The same recognition of human endurance under impossible circumstances. Rose has spent her life documenting how people survive when systems fail them. Vietnam is just the latest chapter. She writes her article in her Saigon hotel room, the same way she's written thousands of articles over 5 decades. Typewriter on the desk, cigarette burning in an ashtray, words flowing onto paper with the practiced ease of a professional who has been doing this since 1915. The article is published in Woman's Day in December 1965. It's buried between recipes and household tips. The editors don't quite know what to do with war correspondence in a women's magazine. They run it because Rose has a contract, but they don't promote it, don't make it a centerpiece. It's just another article in a magazine aimed at suburban housewives. Rose is frustrated. She's written what she considers important journalism, documenting a crucial moment in the Cold War, explaining why this war matters, and it's treated as filler content between advertisements for refrigerators. The article doesn't mention the Little House books. Nobody reading Woman's Day in December 1965 would know that the woman writing about Vietnam also helped create one of the most beloved children's book series in America. That connection remains invisible. The ghostwriter who made Laura Ingalls Wilder famous is still anonymous. Rose returns to Connecticut in late 1965. She's exhausted. The trip has taken a physical toll. She's lost weight. Her hands shake more than they used to. She sleeps for days after arriving home, her body recovering from the ordeal. But she's not done, not finished, not ready to retire. She starts planning another trip, a bigger trip, a 3-year world tour. She'll document the Cold War globally, interview people behind the Iron Curtain, travel to Africa, Asia, Europe, bear witness to whether freedom or tyranny is winning. Woman's Day agrees to publish her dispatches. The contract is signed. The itinerary is planned. Departure date, late October 1968. Rose will be 81 years old when she leaves. Old enough that most people would consider the trip suicidal. Rose considers it essential. She spends the next 3 years preparing, researching destinations, arranging contacts, learning enough basic phrases in multiple languages to conduct interviews, updating her passport, getting vaccinations, buying practical travel clothes. She's methodical, organised, professional. The same qualities that made her a successful ghostwriter for 50 years now applied to planning the adventure of her final years. She's going to die eventually. Everyone does. But she's going to die working, documenting, bearing witness, not sitting in a Connecticut farmhouse waiting for the end. The secret about the Little House book stays locked away. The manuscripts remain hidden, and Rose keeps moving forward the way she always has, refusing to stop until her body forces her to. October 29th, 1968. Rose Wilder, Lane's farmhouse in Danbury, Connecticut smells like fresh bread. She's been baking. At 81 years old, the night before the most ambitious trip of her life, Rose is in her kitchen making bread from scratch. Her suitcase sits by the front door, packed, ready. Everything she'll need for 3 years of travel, practical clothes, notebooks, her typewriter in its case, medications, travel documents, passport, tickets, cash in multiple currencies. She's thought of everything, planned for every contingency, been preparing for 3 years. Tomorrow morning, October 30th, she leaves for the airport. First stop, London, then Paris, then further east. 3 years documenting the Cold War, 3 years interviewing people living under communism, fighting for freedom, surviving in the space between democracy and totalitarianism. It's everything Rose has worked toward. The culmination of 5 decades of journalism. The bread comes out of the oven, golden, perfect. Rose sets it on the counter to cool. She cleans her kitchen with the thoroughness of someone who won't be back for 3 years, wipes down counters, washes dishes, puts everything away. The house is ready for her absence. She's made arrangements. A neighbour will check on the property. Another friend will handle her mail. Her lawyer has instructions for managing her affairs while she's gone. The Little House royalties will continue depositing into her account. Everything is organised. Everything is ready. Rose sits in her living room. Reading, she's always reading. Books on politics, economics, history. She keeps her mind sharp. Has to. The moment you stop learning is the moment you start dying. And Rose isn't ready to die. Not yet. Not when there's so much work left to do. She thinks about her mother. Laura has been dead for 11 years. Would Laura be proud of this trip? Or would she think Rose is being reckless, foolish, too old for adventure? Rose doesn't know. She stopped being able to predict her mother's reactions decades ago. The manuscript is still in Rose's possession. The First 4 Years, Laura's final book written without Rose's help. Rose has read it multiple times since Laura's death. Each time she sees the same thing, evidence of exactly how much Rose contributed to the published Little House books. Laura's solo work is so different from the collaboration that anyone comparing them would immediately ask questions. Rose hasn't published it, hasn't decided what to do with it. It sits with Laura's other papers, locked away, secret. Maybe when Rose returns from her 3-year trip, she'll make a decision. Or maybe she'll leave it for someone else to discover after she dies. She has time. She's only 81, plenty of life left. She goes to bed early. Tomorrow is a long travel day. She needs rest. The bedroom is simple, functional. Rose has never cared much about decoration, just books, writing materials, the tools of her profession. She lies in bed thinking about the trip, about the interviews she'll conduct, the articles she'll write, the truths she'll document. She's excited, more excited than she's been in years. This trip is what she was meant to do: bear witness, tell stories, fight for freedom with the only weapon she's ever trusted: words. Outside, autumn has arrived in Connecticut. The leaves are turning. The air has that crisp edge that means winter is coming. Rose has always loved autumn, the in-between season. Not quite summer, not quite winter, a time of transition. She closes her eyes and sleeps. The neighbour finds her the next morning. October 30th. She doesn't answer her door when the neighbour comes to drive her to the airport. The neighbour has a key. Enters the house, calls Rose's name. No response. Rose is in her bed, still, peaceful. No signs of struggle, no pain written on her face, just sleep. The kind of sleep you don't wake from. The doctors will determine it was heart failure. Natural causes. She was 81. These things happen. Sudden. Painless. The body simply stops. But the cruelty is in the timing. The suitcase by the door, the tickets in her purse, the bread on the counter, the 3-year adventure that will never happen, the articles that will never be written, the truths that will never be documented. Rose Wilder Lane spent 81 years moving. She left South Dakota at 17 and never really stopped. She covered wars on 3 continents. She documented genocides. She built a political movement. She helped her mother become a beloved American author while remaining invisible herself. She argued with presidents. She defied conventions. She refused to stop. And then, on the eve of her greatest adventure, her body said no. The funeral is small. Rose never wanted fanfare. Her will leaves everything to Roger Lee MacBride, a young man she mentored and considered her adopted grandson. He inherits the Connecticut farmhouse, the royalties from Rose's own books, and all of Laura's papers, including the manuscripts, including the first 4 years. Including all the evidence of the collaboration that Rose and Laura kept secret for 36 years. Rose never claimed credit, never broke the silence. She died as she lived, carrying other people's words to the world while keeping her own contributions hidden. The bread grows stale on the counter, the suitcase stays packed. The trip never happens, and the secret passes to the next generation. Roger Lee MacBride is 29 years old when Rose dies. He's a lawyer, a writer, and the closest thing Rose ever had to a son. She met him when he was a teenager, mentored him in libertarian philosophy, watched him grow into a man who shared her political beliefs, and now he's standing in her Connecticut farmhouse, executor of her estate, trying to figure out what to do with decades of accumulated papers. You're watching him now. It's November 1968, a month after Rose's death. Roger is in the attic of the Danbury farmhouse, surrounded by boxes, letters, manuscripts, journals. Rose saved everything. Correspondence with famous writers and politicians, draft articles, research notes, financial records, 60 years of professional and personal documentation. He finds Laura's papers mixed with Rose's. Makes sense. Rose was Laura's daughter and sole heir. When Laura died in 1957, all her papers became Rose's property, and now they're Roger's. Boxes of handwritten notebooks, typed manuscripts, letters between mother and daughter spanning decades. Roger starts reading. He's familiar with the Little House books, everyone his age is. They were required reading in elementary school, but he never paid much attention to how they were created. Never asked Rose about her mother's writing process. Now he's looking at the raw materials and seeing something Rose never told him. He finds Laura's original manuscript, Pioneer Girl, 74,000 words in Laura's handwriting. The autobiography she wrote in 1930 before the Little House series existed. Roger reads it. The prose is plain, factual, episodic, completely different from the published books. Then he finds Rose's typed revisions. This same Wisconsin material from Pioneer Girl transformed into Little House in the Big Woods. He can see the changes. Laura's simple sentences expanded into vivid scenes, manufactured dialogue, added descriptions, restructured chapters. It's right there. Physical evidence of Rose's extensive editing. Roger keeps reading. He finds correspondence between Laura and Rose about the books. Letters where Laura objects to changes. Letters where Rose defends her editorial decisions. Letters negotiating over every dramatic scene and emotional beat. The collaboration is documented, preserved in their own handwriting. And then Roger finds something else, a manuscript in Laura's handwriting, titled The First 4 Years. He's never heard of this book. It's not part of the Little House series. Roger starts reading. The story covers the early years of Laura's marriage to Almanzo, the 1880s, their attempts to establish a farm in South Dakota. It's brutal, honest, dark, crop failures, debt, their baby son dying, their house burning down, Almanzo getting sick and partially paralysed. 4 years of unrelenting hardship with no happy ending. Roger reads the entire manuscript in one sitting, and he immediately recognises something important. This manuscript is different from the published Little House books. The prose is simpler, the pacing is flat, the scenes lack dramatic structure. It reads exactly like Laura's original Pioneer Girl. Plain, factual, unpolished. This is what Laura's writing looks like without Rose's editing. It's proof, evidence, a control sample showing the difference between Laura solo and Laura with Rose. Roger sits in the attic surrounded by boxes and makes a decision. He's going to publish the first 4 years, exactly as Laura wrote it. No editing, no revisions, no Rose. Just Laura's words on the page. Why? Partly because it's a good book, dark and honest in ways the other Little House books aren't. Readers deserve to know what happened during those terrible early years, but also because Roger recognises the historical importance. This manuscript, compared to the published series, will force questions about authorship, about Rose's role, about who really wrote the Little House books. Roger doesn't know if Rose would have wanted this published. She kept it hidden for 11 years after Laura's death, never mentioned it, never tried to get it published. Maybe she knew what it would reveal. Maybe that's exactly why she kept it locked away. But Rose is dead now, and Roger is executor. He has legal authority over the papers. He decides to publish. It takes 3 years to arrange. Finding a publisher, negotiating contracts, handling copyright issues. Harper and Row, the successor to Harper and Brothers, agrees to publish it as the 9th Little House book. They market it as Laura Ingalls Wilder's lost manuscript, the book nobody knew existed. The first 4 years is published in 1971, 14 years after Laura's death, 3 years after Rose's death, and immediately readers notice something is wrong. The book doesn't sound like the other Little House books. The writing is rougher, less polished. The scenes are shorter and less vivid. The dialogue is minimal and awkward. It feels incomplete, unfinished, like a first draft that needed editing but never got it, because that's exactly what it is. Laura's first draft. Written sometime in the 1940s, put in a drawer and forgotten, never sent to Rose, never revised, never transformed through the editorial process that created the other 8 books. Book reviewers are confused. Some think it's a weaker book because Laura was older when she wrote it. past her prime. Others think Harper published it purely for commercial reasons, cashing in on the Little House brand even though the manuscript wasn't ready. But a few sharp-eyed critics notice something else. They compare the first 4 years to the earlier books. They recognise that the difference isn't age or quality, it's authorship, or more precisely, editorial intervention. One reviewer writes, "This book raises questions about how the other Little House books were actually created. Laura Wilder's solo effort is noticeably different from the published series, what changed, and who changed it. It's the first public acknowledgement of the authorship question. The first time anyone asks in print whether Laura wrote the Little House books alone." Roger reads these reviews in his office. He knows the answer. He's seen the manuscripts. He knows Rose's role, but he doesn't say anything publicly. Not yet. He's not sure what Rose would have wanted, not sure how much of the secret to reveal. The manuscripts sit in storage, preserved but not accessible, and the questions continue to multiply. The 1970s are a strange time for the Little House books. On one hand, they're more popular than ever. The television series Little House on the Prairie debuts in 1974, starring Michael Landon as Pear Ingalls. Millions of Americans watch it every week. The show has almost nothing to do with Laura's actual books. It invents characters, creates storylines Laura never wrote, turns the frontier into a wholesome family drama. But it drives book sales through the roof. Libraries can't keep the Little House series in stock. On the other hand, academics are starting to look closer, and they're seeing things that don't add up. You're in a university library now. It's 1978. A graduate student named Rosa Ann Moore is writing her dissertation on children's literature. She's reading the Little House books carefully, taking notes, analysing the prose style, and she notices something odd. The writing is too sophisticated for what it claims to be. Laura Ingalls Wilder was a farm woman who never finished high school. She published local newspaper columns before writing the Little House books. But the published books show professional-level craft, scene construction, dialogue pacing, narrative tension. The kind of skills that take decades to develop. Moore starts digging. She requests access to Laura's original manuscripts, wants to see the drafts, compare them to the published versions, study Laura's writing process. Roger MacBride, who now controls the literary estate, denies the request. The papers are private, he says, family documents, not available for academic research. Moore is frustrated but persistent. She finds other sources, letters in library archives, interviews with people who knew Laura, published correspondence. She pieces together what she can without access to the manuscripts. In 1980, Moore publishes an article in Children's Literature. The title is careful, diplomatic. Laura Ingalls Wilder's Orange Notebooks and the Art of the Little House Books. But the argument is clear. The published books show evidence of extensive professional editing. The prose is too polished to be Laura's first attempts at children's literature. Someone helped her, someone with serious writing skills. Moore doesn't directly accuse Rose. She doesn't have proof, but she asks the question, who edited these books, and how much did they change? It's the first academic article to raise the authorship issue publicly, and it sparks debate in the small world of children's literature scholarship. Some scholars defend Laura. Of course she could write sophisticated prose. Why assume a farm woman couldn't develop professional skills? That's condescending, sexist, underestimating women's capabilities. Other scholars agree with Moore. Something doesn't add up. The gap between Laura's journalism, simple, straightforward columns about farm life, and the published Little House books is too wide. Someone bridged that gap, someone with professional training. Through the 1980s, more scholars start investigating. They find mentions of Rose in Laura's letters, brief references to "my daughter helped with editing." They find Rose's own novels, "Let the Hurricane Roar, Free Land," and notice the similarities in style to the Little House books. Same vivid description, same dialogue techniques, same narrative structure. The evidence is circumstantial but mounting. Rose was a professional writer. Rose had ghostwriting experience. Rose was present during the creation of the Little House books, and the books show professional-level craft that Laura's other writing doesn't demonstrate, but the manuscripts remain locked away. Roger MacBride continues to deny access. Without the original drafts, scholars can't prove anything. They can raise questions, they can point to inconsistencies, but they can't definitively show Rose's editorial role. In 1987, something changes. The Laura Ingalls Wilder Home Association in Missouri acquires some of Laura's papers. Not the major manuscripts, those are still controlled by Roger, but letters, notes, miscellaneous documents. They create a small archive, and they allow controlled scholarly access. Researchers descend on Mansfield, Missouri. They read Laura's correspondence. They study her handwriting. They compare different documents, and they find more evidence of Rose's involvement. Letters where Laura explicitly asks Rose for help. Letters where Rose describes making extensive revisions. Letters where they argue about specific scenes and how to dramatize them. It's all there. Documented. Preserved. A scholar named William Anderson publishes a biography of Laura in 1987. He acknowledges Rose's editorial role more directly than anyone has before. He writes, "Rose Wilder Lane was not merely a helpful daughter. She was Laura's editor, collaborator, and literary agent. The Little House books as published reflect Rose's professional skills as much as Laura's memories." It's still diplomatic. Anderson doesn't use the word ghostwriter, doesn't claim Rose wrote the books. But he makes clear that the collaboration was substantial, that Rose's contribution was significant, that the books aren't simply Laura's unmediated memories. The Little House fan community reacts with shock. These books are beloved. Millions of people grew up reading them. They represent authentic American pioneer experience. The idea that they were heavily edited, or worse, partially ghostwritten, feels like betrayal. Online forums in the early internet era explode with debate. Fans defend Laura. Academics defend their research. The arguments get heated, personal. People accuse scholars of trying to destroy a beloved author's reputation. Scholars accuse fans of refusing to accept evidence. And through it all, the key manuscripts remain hidden. Laura's original pioneer girl. Rose's typed revisions. The correspondence documenting their fights. Roger MacBride keeps them locked away, refusing access, protecting secrets he inherited from Rose. But Roger can't hold them forever. He's getting older. And there's a scholar named William Holtz who's been researching Rose Wilder Lane's life for years. Holtz isn't primarily interested in the Little House books. He's interested in Rose, the journalist, the political theorist, the ghostwriter. And Holtz has access to archives Roger doesn't control. Rose's correspondence with publishers, her letters to friends, her journals. Holtz is assembling a biography of Rose, and when he's done, the secret will finally be exposed. 1993. William Holtz publishes The Ghost in the Little House, A Life of Rose Wilder Lane. The title alone is provocative. Ghost has a double meaning. Rose was literally a ghostwriter by profession. But the title also suggests she was the ghost in Laura's little house, the invisible presence shaping the books from behind the scenes. The book is a bombshell. Holtz spent years researching Rose's life. He gained access to her papers at the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library in Iowa. He read her journals, her correspondence with publishers, her letters to friends. He interviewed people who knew her. He compared manuscript versions of the Little House books, and he makes an aggressive argument. Rose didn't just edit the Little House books, she essentially wrote them. Laura provided raw material, memories, rough drafts, factual details, but Rose transformed that material into literature. She created the narrative structure. She wrote the dialogue. She constructed the scenes. She imposed the ideology. The books are Laura's memories told through Rose's professional writing skills. Holtz estimates that Rose rewrote approximately 40 to 60% of the published Little House books. He presents evidence, manuscript pages showing Laura's handwriting crossed out and replaced with Rose's typing, letters where Rose describes making extensive changes, correspondence where Laura objects to Rose's revisions and Rose overrules her. The most damning evidence comes from Rose's own journals. In private entries from the 1930s, Rose writes about the exhausting work of fixing Mother's manuscripts. She describes adding scenes Laura never wrote, creating dialogue from vague references, restructuring entire chapters for dramatic impact. She's explicit about her role, and she's bitter about the invisibility. Holtz quotes Rose's journal from 1937. "I am so weary of turning Mother's dry recitations into readable prose. She fights every improvement, insists on factual accuracy over narrative effectiveness, doesn't understand that readers want stories, not history lessons." That entry destroys the myth of harmonious collaboration. Rose wasn't a helpful daughter providing light editing. She was a professional ghostwriter frustrated by her client's resistance to necessary changes. The dynamic was adversarial, not cooperative. The scholarly community erupts. Holtz's book wins awards. It's praised for meticulous research and bold argumentation. It's nominated for the Pulitzer Prize in biography. Reviewers call it groundbreaking, a necessary correction to literary history. Finally, they say, someone is giving Rose Wilder Lane the credit she deserves. But the Little House fan community is furious. They feel betrayed, deceived. These books shaped their childhoods. They believed they were reading authentic pioneer memories from Laura Ingalls Wilder. Now they're being told the books were substantially ghostwritten by Laura's daughter, who imposed her own political ideology onto historical events. Fan magazines publish angry responses. Letters to editors accuse Holtz of destroying Laura's reputation for academic fame. Online forums, this is early internet, primitive bulletin boards, fill with heated debates. Some fans refuse to believe it. They insist Holtz is lying, exaggerating, misinterpreting evidence. Other fans defend Holtz. They point out that his evidence is solid. He's not inventing anything. He's revealing what Rose and Laura deliberately hid. If people feel deceived, they should blame Rose and Laura for keeping the collaboration secret, not Holtz for exposing it. The debate gets personal. Scholars are accused of hating Laura, of being elitist academics who can't accept that a farm woman could write well. Fans are accused of being naive, of refusing to accept documented evidence because it contradicts their childhood memories. And at the centre of the controversy is a fundamental question. Does it matter? If the books are good, and they are good, millions of readers love them. Does it matter who actually wrote them? Does Rose's ghostwriting diminish Laura's contribution? Or should we acknowledge the collaboration and appreciate both women's roles? Some scholars argue that Rose deserves co-author credit. The books should be attributed to Laura Ingalls Wilder and Rose Wilder Lane. That's only fair, that's honest. That acknowledges the reality of how the books were created. Other scholars disagree. Laura provided the memories, the experiences, the authentic voice. Rose provided professional craft, but she was working with Laura's material. It's still fundamentally Laura's story. Rose was an editor, not a co-author. The distinction between editing and ghostwriting becomes the central debate. Where's the line? If you rewrite 40% of a manuscript, are you an aggressive editor or a ghostwriter? If you add scenes the original author didn't write, are you co-creating or ghostwriting? If you impose your ideology onto someone else's memories, whose story is it? These questions don't have clear answers, and 60 years after the fact, with both Laura and Rose dead, there's no way to resolve them definitively. The women who could clarify the collaboration are gone. The secret they kept is partially revealed but still contested. What Holtz's biography does accomplish is forcing the conversation. Before 1993, Rose's role was minimized, hidden, ignored. After 1993, it's impossible to discuss the Little House books without discussing Rose. The invisible ghostwriter is finally visible. But visibility brings new problems. Rose's reputation is complicated. She's not just a ghostwriter. She's a libertarian political theorist with extreme anti-government views. She's someone who potentially distorted historical reality to support her ideology. Acknowledging her contribution to the Little House books means acknowledging that those books carry political messages Rose deliberately inserted. For fans who loved the books as innocent children's stories, this is devastating. The books aren't innocent, they're ideological. They're promoting specific political beliefs about government, individualism, and American identity. Beliefs that Rose, not Laura, may have emphasized or invented. The Little House books survive the controversy. They're still widely read, still beloved, but they're understood differently now. Not as pure historical memoir, but as collaborative fiction based on historical events. Not as one woman's authentic voice, but as two women's contested partnership. And the debate continues, 20 years after Holtz's biography, 30 years, still arguing about who wrote what, still fighting over credit and authorship and truth. 2014, 84 years after Laura first wrote it. The manuscript that started everything is finally published. Pioneer Girl, the annotated autobiography, appears in bookstores across America. It's Laura's original 74,000-word memoir. The one Rose shopped to publishers in 1931. The one that got rejected over and over. The raw material that became the Little House series. You're holding it now. This thick volume edited by scholar Pamela Smith Hill. Laura's handwritten words transcribed exactly as she wrote them. No Rose, no editing, no transformation into children's literature. Just Laura's memories, plain and factual, exactly as she experienced them. And immediately anyone who reads it can see the difference. The prose is simple, straightforward. Laura describes events chronologically. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. No dramatic build-up, no carefully constructed scenes, no vivid sensory details, just facts. She mentions that Pa played the fiddle. She doesn't describe how the music filled the cabin, warming the cold Wisconsin winter. She states that Ma made cheese. She doesn't create a 3-page scene showing the entire process. She notes that a panther screamed near their cabin. She doesn't build a suspenseful nighttime scene with the family huddled in fear. Scholars compare Pioneer Girl to the published Little House books page by page, and the transformation is stunning. Rose didn't just polish Laura's prose, she rebuilt it from the foundation up. She took Laura's sentence fragments and created literature. But Pioneer Girl also reveals what Rose removed. The harsh stuff, the uncomfortable stuff, the reality that didn't fit the wholesome pioneer mythology. Laura writes about neighbours getting drunk and fighting, about men cursing, about violence and cruelty on the frontier. Rose cut all of it from the children's books. Laura describes genuine poverty, hunger that hurt, winters when they didn't know if they'd survive, the shame of wearing clothes so patched and worn that other children laughed. Rose softened this, made poverty look like an adventure instead of a nightmare. Laura mentions the baby brother who died, Freddie, born in 1875, dead 12 days later. Laura was 8 years old when it happened. She remembers it clearly, writes about it plainly in Pioneer Girl. Rose removed him entirely from the Little House books. Freddie doesn't exist in the published series. He's been erased. Why? Partly because dead babies are too dark for children's literature in the 1930s. Publishers wouldn't accept it. But also because Freddie's death complicates the narrative of pioneer triumph. Hard to celebrate self-reliance when your baby dies because you can't afford a doctor. The publication of Pioneer Girl settles some debates and creates new ones. It proves definitively that Rose made extensive changes. No one can argue anymore that Rose was just a light editor fixing typos. The evidence is overwhelming. Laura's original versus the published books are two completely different works. But it doesn't settle the authorship question. Because transformation isn't the same as creation. Rose worked with Laura's material, Laura's memories, Laura's experiences. Rose provided craft, structure, professional technique. But whose story is it? Some scholars say the book should be attributed to both women. Laura Ingalls Wilder with Rose Wilder Lane. That acknowledges the collaboration honestly. That gives both women credit for their contributions. Other scholars disagree. Laura is the author, the originating consciousness, the source of the memories and the narrative voice. Rose was an editor, an aggressive, transformative editor, but still an editor. The books are Laura's, shaped by Rose but fundamentally Laura's. The debate continues. Scholars publish articles arguing both sides. Academic conferences hold panels debating the authorship question. Graduate students write dissertations analysing the collaboration, and there's no consensus, no clear answer, just ongoing argument. What Pioneer Girl does prove is that both women were essential. Laura couldn't have published these books without Rose's professional skills. Rose couldn't have created these books without Laura's authentic memories. It was a true collaboration, even if it was contested, uncomfortable, and ultimately kept secret for decades. The fan community is still divided. Some readers feel betrayed. They grew up believing Laura wrote these books alone. Learning about Rose's extensive role feels like discovering your favourite childhood story was a lie. Other readers are fascinated. They appreciate understanding how literature is actually created. They find the mother-daughter collaboration more interesting than the myth of lone authorship. They want to know more about Rose, about her ghostwriting career, about her political beliefs and how they shaped the books. But here's what everyone agrees on. The Little House books are still good, still worth reading, still important to American culture. The authorship controversy doesn't diminish the book's value. It complicates them. Makes them richer, more interesting, more human. Because the story of how the Little House books were created is as compelling as the books themselves. Two women, mother and daughter, both talented, both flawed, both desperate for money and validation, coming together to create something neither could have created alone, fighting over every page, keeping their collaboration secret, taking that secret to their graves, and leaving the rest of us to figure out what really happened, who deserves credit, whose voice we're hearing when we read those beloved books. The manuscripts are finally available. Scholars can study them, compare versions, trace Rose's edits, document the collaboration. But even with all the evidence, the truth remains contested. Because truth isn't just about facts, it's about interpretation. And people interpret the same facts differently. Some see a ghostwriter taking credit that isn't hers. Others see an editor finally getting recognition for invisible labour. Some see a mother exploited by her daughter. Others see a daughter helping her mother achieve dreams she couldn't achieve alone. All of these interpretations have evidence supporting them, and that's what makes the story so compelling. Here's what we know for certain. Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote the original manuscript in 1930. Rose Wilder Lane extensively revised it, adding scenes, creating dialogue, restructuring the narrative. The published books reflect both women's contributions. They kept the extent of their collaboration secret for over 30 years, and here's what we still argue about. Was Rose a ghostwriter or an editor? Does the distinction even matter? Should both women get author credit? Did Rose's political ideology corrupt Laura's authentic memories? Were the books a collaborative triumph or a complicated exploitation? Scholars have been fighting over these questions since William Holtz published his biography in 1993. And 20-plus years later, there's still no consensus, just different camps with different interpretations of the same evidence. The Rose deserves co-author credit camp argues that rewriting 40 to 60% of a manuscript isn't editing, it's co-authorship. Rose created scenes Laura never wrote. She manufactured dialogue from thin air. She imposed narrative structure Laura never conceived. She transformed unmarketable autobiography into best-selling children's literature. That's creation, not editing. The books should be attributed to both women. The Laura is the sole author camp argues that Laura provided the essential element, authentic pioneer memories from someone who actually lived through frontier hardships. Rose provided craft, but craft serves content. Without Laura's experiences, there are no books. Rose was working with Laura's material, Laura's voice, Laura's life. She was an aggressive editor, but Laura remained the author. The It's Complicated camp, probably the largest group, argues that binary authorship doesn't capture the reality of collaborative creative work. The Little House books resulted from a partnership where both women contributed essential elements neither could have provided alone. Trying to assign percentages or determine who really wrote them misses the point. They're collaborative works, with all the complexity that implies. And then there's the political question that makes everything messier. Rose imposed her libertarian ideology onto Laura's memories. She removed references to government assistance like the Homestead Act. She romanticized poverty and self-reliance while erasing the harsh realities of frontier failure. The Little House books aren't just stories. They're political arguments disguised as children's literature. Does that matter? Some scholars say absolutely. Children reading these books absorb political messages they don't recognize. They learn that pioneers succeeded through pure self-reliance, ignoring the massive government support that actually enabled Western settlement. They internalize the myth that individuals don't need collective support. The books have shaped American political culture in ways most readers never realize. Other scholars say political content doesn't invalidate literary merit. All literature contains ideology. Authors always make choices about what to emphasize, what to exclude, how to frame events. Rose's libertarian beliefs influenced her editing the same way any editor's worldview influences their work. That doesn't make the books propaganda. It makes them human creations with human perspectives. The modern Little House industry doesn't know how to handle any of this. Publishers still attribute the book solely to Laura Ingalls Wilder. Rose isn't mentioned on covers. New editions don't include explanatory notes about the collaboration. The myth of Laura as sole author persists in the marketplace, even though scholars have thoroughly documented Rose's role. Why? Partly it's commercial. The Laura Ingalls Wilder brand is valuable. She's an American icon, a beloved grandmother figure telling authentic pioneer stories. Adding Rose complicates the brand, makes it messier, harder to market. Publishers prefer the simple story, even if it's incomplete, but it's also emotional. Readers have relationships with these books. They read them as children, read them to their children. The books connect generations. Revealing the complicated authorship feels like losing something precious, like discovering your grandmother's stories were actually written by your aunt who had political motives. The Little House sites in South Dakota, Kansas, Wisconsin, and Missouri navigate this carefully. They focus on Laura's life, the real historical events, the actual frontier experience. They mention Rose in passing. Laura's daughter helped with editing, but don't dwell on the controversy. Visitors want to connect with pioneer history, not get lectured about authorship debates. Meanwhile, scholars continue researching. New articles appear every year analysing different aspects of the collaboration. Digital humanities projects compare Laura's and Rose's prose style statistically. Archival discoveries reveal new letters, new evidence, new complications. The debate will probably never be fully resolved. Because it's not really about facts. We have the facts. We have the manuscripts, we have the letters, we have extensive documentation. The disagreement is about interpretation, about what authorship means, about how to credit collaborative work, about whether political ideology corrupts historical narrative. These are philosophical questions, not historical ones. And philosophy doesn't have definitive answers, just better and worse arguments. Ongoing conversation, permanent debate. What we can say with certainty is this. The Little House books we know and love resulted from a complex, contested collaboration between two talented, flawed, desperate women who needed each other and resented each other in equal measure. They created something beautiful and problematic, beloved and ideological, authentic and manufactured, true and false at the same time, and they took their secrets to their graves, leaving us to argue about what really happened. But here's the thing. Nobody asks. Where did Rose get the money to live in Connecticut for 30 years after the Little House books were published? How did a woman who was once one of the highest paid writers in America end up dying nearly broke, despite decades of royalty payments? What happened to Rose Wilder Lane's fortune? And why did the woman who helped create an American literary empire spend her final years worried about money? That's a different scandal, one that's been buried even deeper than the ghostwriting controversy.